All right, so up next we have Mary Grove. Mary is a partner at Revolution's Rise of the Rest Seed Fund and actually a partner with us on Dispatch as well as Structural, which will be the next presentation. Mary, do you want to step on up?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mary Grove, and as Rob said, I'm an investment partner at Revolution's Rise of the Rest Seed Fund, a firm dedicated to investing in innovation outside of Silicon Valley, Boston, and New York. I want to thank Ryan and Rob and the whole Great North Labs team for all you do to invest in the ecosystem here, for convening this amazing group of leaders today, and for including me in the conversation. Before I begin, a quick show of hands. How many of you in the room are entrepreneurs? Amazing. How many of you are investors? Ecosystem leaders? Aspiring entrepreneurs? Any students? Awesome. It's wonderful to be here with you today. I've had the good fortune of working with and getting to know some of you, but most of us likely have not met because I'm new here, proud to call Minnesota home as of a few months ago. My husband Steve and I moved here with our 1-year-old twins, Luke and Lottie, from Silicon Valley to Minneapolis this past spring. There are many compelling reasons we decided to do this, including the opportunity to raise our children here in Minnesota amongst our village, close to Northfield, where my husband grew up, because the quality of life here is so great with the investments in infrastructure, the park systems, the strength of the education systems, because of the Minnesota Vikings, although last night's game still leaves me in pain. And the big picture here is that we decided to leave Silicon Valley for Minnesota because of our fundamental belief about where the future of the innovation economy is headed, and that is here in the Midwest and places like it. I've been lucky to spend the last more than 15 years working in technology and entrepreneurship, and today I'd love to share with you some of my biggest learnings from the field and the blueprint for thinking about how to invest in the next generation of economic opportunity. Rewinding back to several decades ago to share a bit about my own personal story. My passion for entrepreneurship started with my mom and dad. They were immigrants from Thailand who grew up in rural poverty, in villages without electricity. They immigrated to America, got married here, raised 3 children, and started and ran a small business together for over 30 years. My earliest memories, and many of my fondest memories, were from my parents' office. Through hustle and grit, failure and success, from them, I learned the power of the American dream, the pursuit of economic opportunity, and the desire to create a better life for the generation to come. So many years later, I started at one of the most innovative companies in the world, Google, when it was very much a startup. There I learned the importance of mission, of having a mission that is so expansive that you are truly so passionate about. Now, Google's mission is to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. There are so many layers to a mission like that over time as you peel back the layers of the onion. It's incredible to think about what's possible. When I started, we were about 2,000 people, and when I left Google this past March, we were over 75,000. I started in 2004, working on the IPO deal team, had roles in business development, international development, and most recently, I had the opportunity to start and lead the Google for Entrepreneurs team, a group who supports startups and entrepreneurs in over 140 countries. So I wanted to take time to share a few learnings from my time at Google. My first learning is this notion that constraint breeds creativity, that when we are forced to bootstrap, the results can be amazing. My favorite illustration of this concept is a story from Afghanistan. So in 2011, I went with a team from Google to both Kabul and Herat with a lens towards bringing more economic development to the region. Now, everywhere we went, people were so enthusiastic about Google and Google search, and it was very humbling. And at the time, internet penetration in Afghanistan was only 4%. So I had to ask, how is it that people are engaging with Google and Google search? Well, it turns out radio is the ubiquitous form of communication in Afghanistan. And there's a radio show called Percival, which translates into seek and search. So people call into this radio show from their traditional mobile phones. They ask a query. The DJ has access to the internet, Googles it, and reads the answer over the air. Just incredibly innovative. It just shows that spirit and that grit, that constraint breeds creativity, and that where there is a will, we will find a way. So this applies as well, of course, to product development, to startup life, to how we operate companies and corporations. And being forced to bootstrap isn't always a bad thing, it's often the best thing. My second lesson is the importance of building from day one a culture that thrives on transparency, trust, both top-down and bottoms-up feedback. One of my favorite traditions at Google was something our founders, Larry and Sergey, started in their very first days of the company, called TGIF. And the concept is quite simple, right? It's that every Friday at 4 p.m., the whole company would gather in the main area for an all-hands, and they would recap what launched that week, highs, lows, challenges, but really an open forum where any employee of any level could ask a question directly of our founders. They would answer it unscripted, no PR. Everything always remained confidential within the company. As we scaled to 75,000 people, that never changed. The format changed to video conferences and multicasts and recorded sessions for those who were in different time zones. But it is but one example of ensuring that your leadership remains accessible, that your culture feels open, and that people have a forum to be heard. My third learning is that economic opportunity is global. The internet has democratized access to entrepreneurship. You aren't constrained to launching products in your city or even your country. And I think one of the best examples of this is Startup Nation, Israel, a country with a population of 8.5 million people. And because the market is so small, they, as entrepreneurs, are launching their products for a global market from day one, internationalized in English, and it truly is working. The most successful entrepreneurs I've met with and worked with are thinking from day one about internationalization, about expanding beyond their cities, beyond their states, beyond their countries, meaning thinking about the opportunity as truly global. My fourth learning is that looking at the opportunities globally from a product perspective, we've moved from the conversation about having something that's mobile optimized to mobile first, and now in many cases to mobile only. By the year 2020, 90% of people in the world over the age of 6 will have a mobile phone or access to one. This is a pretty staggering and exciting statistic because it means for the entrepreneurs in the room, your possible user base continues to grow by the day. It's exciting to think about our very interconnected world through this lens, and now I want to zoom in specifically to look more closely at the US. I fundamentally believe that startups and small businesses are the backbone of economic development and job creation. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, small businesses account for 62% of all net new private sector jobs. Now that's very exciting. What's not exciting is that access to opportunity is, of course, not equally distributed. We know that last year, 75% of venture capital funding went to just 3 places in the United States: California, which received 50% of it, Boston, and New York. We know that less than 10% of venture capital funding last year went to women. We know that less than 1% of venture capital funding went to African Americans. This is unacceptable. And yet, we're also seeing the phenomenon of people fleeing the coasts. In the last 3 months of 2017, San Francisco, where I moved from, lost more residents to outward migration than any other city in the country. There is growing concern nationwide about the role that technology and artificial intelligence will play in displacing the American labor force in the coming decades. And yet I believe that we can embrace technology while being realistic about what it will take to make us competitive in today's global economy. Here is a roadmap with a few ideas for how we can think about this to maximize opportunity in our communities. Number one, democratize access to capital and invest aggressively outside the coasts. As I mentioned, I'm an investment partner at Revolution, specifically on our Rise of the Rest seed fund. Revolution to date has deployed over $1 billion in capital outside of Silicon Valley. We have a $150 million Rise of the Rest seed fund now, specifically, as I mentioned, to invest outside of Silicon Valley, Boston, and New York. We have over 90 companies in our portfolio who span more than 50 cities across the United States. We believe, quite simply, and we are seeing, that the rest is rising. Cities like Detroit, Indianapolis, Salt Lake City, Chattanooga, Louisville, and Philadelphia are rising. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Madison, Milwaukee are rising. We believe that investing outside the coasts is not just the right thing to do, it is the economically savvy thing to do. We also want to be a part of elevating the profile of all the great companies doing innovative work across the country. When I look across the Rise of the Rest portfolio today, I see so many game-changing examples. For example, StockX in Detroit, a company who enables the buying and selling of high-demand consumer products, think sneakers, watches, handbags, by connecting buyers and sellers with real-time market pricing. They just raised a $44 million round and are doing $2 million in sales every single day. Companies like Blockable in Seattle, a recent investment of ours, a company who's building beautiful modular housing units for low and middle income markets, because 90% of the market today is focused on custom high-end developments. Their thesis is that we should build housing the same way we manufacture cars and planes, in a modular way, and help thousands of people along the way access affordable housing. It's companies like FreightWaves in Chattanooga, Tennessee, who provides actionable data and analytics on the $700 billion surface freight market by aggregating data from over 150 sources, representing $270 billion in freight transactions. It's companies like Neolite, based in Phoenix, Arizona, who creates medical devices for treating and diagnosing infant jaundice. Companies like 120 Water Audit, based in Zionsville, Indiana. They provide software and products to test contaminant levels in our waters. And here in the Twin Cities, we are proud to call 4 companies our portfolio companies. Dispatch, and you just heard from Andrew and Ryan, Structural, and you'll hear from Scott Burns in just a moment, 75F, and Kitizen. The second part of the blueprint is to invest aggressively in our youth. I think about the future with so much hope, because I've seen firsthand what our youth are capable of, and they are amazing. 5 years ago, my husband Steve and I started a nonprofit called Silicon North Stars. Our mission is to inspire and educate young Minnesotans towards futures in tech, because we believe that seeing is believing. So each year we take a cohort of 16 rising ninth graders from economically underserved backgrounds in the Twin Cities. We take them out to Silicon Valley for a week-long tech boot camp where they gain inspiration and access. We visit companies like Facebook, Google, YouTube, Stanford University, a number of startups, and then they actually build and pitch their own company ideas. After that trip, we return here to the Twin Cities. They start high school, and we're part of their experience for the next 4 years, where we connect them with local tech leaders and mentors. Our youth are coming up with ideas for how to stop gun violence in schools, how to build stronger bridges between immigrants and local communities, solutions for food deserts in our cities. Seeing really is believing. This past Saturday, I spent the day in St. Paul, where Brett Brohl and the Techstars team hosted a Mentor Madness session for our students. Over a dozen founders came out to support the students in one-on-ones. This pay it forward mentality is paving the way towards a brighter future. The fifth part of the blueprint plan is to focus ruthlessly on cultivating the 5 key ingredients of thriving startup ecosystems. Of course, there are a lot of things that go into making communities thrive, but I want to share 5 ingredients in particular. Number 1 is talent. And I think it's really appropriate today that we are on the St. Cloud campus, and it's wonderful to be here. But when we think about talent for the entrepreneurial generation, we can't underscore enough, of course, the importance of computer science and engineering programs, but our message is equally that to run and scale a world-changing company, you need talent of all types: marketing, legal, finance, public policy, biz dev, you name it. So we really need to cultivate this robust platform of all types of talent. The second ingredient is density. Having a density in a physical cluster of universities, of accelerators, co-working spaces, affordable housing, exciting workspaces, accessibility among them is a really key thing. Number 3 is culture. And when we think about culture, I mean a culture of risk-taking, one that embraces failure, one that supports our students who graduate to know that the struggle of entrepreneurship is not just a path, a viable path, but it's one that should be celebrated and supported. The fourth is access to capital, which we've talked a lot about, and I am so hopeful that the trend continues to take place where capital is flowing from the coasts and from within and from cities outwards. And the fifth, I think very important key ingredient of thriving startup ecosystems is a regulatory environment conducive to startups. What role can the government play in helping us create policies that make it easy to both start and sunset a business quickly, to provide credits and other incentives for angel investors and others who would come forward to support the next generation of entrepreneurs? Lastly, I want to close by talking about the case for investing in the Midwest, and Minnesota specifically. There is a lot to be excited about. Minnesota is right now a top 20 tech state, with tech jobs accounting for $25 billion of our state's economy. We're also among the top 5 states for female entrepreneurs. Minnesota's net domestic migration numbers tipped positive last year for the first time in 15 years. That's the reverse trend of where I just moved from in Silicon Valley. When we got here and were looking to buy a home, our real estate agent told us that last year, 1/3 of her buyers were from outside of the state. One of the distinctive features of the tech industry here is that it is integrated into one of the most diverse state economies in the country, spanning medtech, retail, agriculture, food processing, financial services, and much more. And of course, our medical alley is home to more than 15,000 health businesses, including 6 Fortune 500 health companies. Now, it's hard to get stuck inside a tech bubble when you're focused on solving real problems across a variety of businesses. I believe that the future of this country will be defined by how we leverage technology to improve everyone's prosperity. And I believe that Minnesota and the Midwest are very well positioned to play a leadership role in this future. In closing, I believe there is a rising tide sweeping across the country and that the rest is rising. Our colleagues and peers on the coasts are closely watching, and they're finding more opportunities to jump off the sidelines and take part in what's happening here. It's magical and it's exciting. I'm very eager to be a part of the community here to help tell our story nationally and to support one another. I hope that more families like mine can experience the American dream, and I believe that by investing as we are now, we can be at the heart of making that dream a reality. Thank you.